So in order to have this make some sense, I need to start with a couple of things. One is we're a satellite terminal company, mobile, and the satellites are embedded into the roof of the car, not unlike this one over here to the left, right? And that we just finished this major trip across Japan, not surprisingly, because we work very closely with a well-known OEM there, and that we were showing off the technology. Many times, you hear in the discussions in this room about connectivity, and there's your cue. I would like to show what that connectivity means. This is taken from a GoPro on the front of an automobile, going up to a satellite, and then coming back to an office. We're filming it from an office. So when people talk about connectivity into an automobile, and it's little trickles of data in and out, I go, what in the world are we talking about? So this is a discussion about the post-5G world and what true connectivity going into and out of a car is. And here's an example of it, of data being sucked out of the car, up to the satellite, back down into an office here that you get to see somebody's elbow very gracefully. So, Roger Langtot, great guy. I needed a quote from him, and of course, it's the same message that we've heard dozens of times here today, and that is that data is king, analytics is king, and the company that has the most connectivity will be the companies that survive and thrive in the next generation. This slide is not controversial in this room at all, but in the industry I come from, which is the satellite industry, it is extremely controversial. We are breaking and have broken with the rest of our industry and say, 5G, it's delicious, we support it, we endorse it, we believe it is necessary. The rest of our industry is fighting it tooth and nail, and frankly, they're dinosaurs, and that's the way it is. However, because we're an automobile company and we believe in the car, we say there are certain problems with 5G. Coverage, capacity, cost. It was never ever designed to be cheap and cheerful. It was never designed to be ubiquitous. The idea of putting one of these systems down every 100 meters, interesting thought, and the rollout could take a long time. However, this next slide shows you why space has spectrum to spare. Yes. The blue area over to our left here is terrestrial mobile. The satellite is in black and gray. But the reuse of satellite, because we have low Earth orbits, we have geosynchronous orbits, we have MEO orbits, adds up to be a huge multiplier of what is available in terrestrial. So you saw the first video that showed a huge amount of data coming in and out of the automobile. And the fact that there's no spectrum constraint. There is enormous amounts of spectrum that is available from geosynchronous, we'll talk about that, but LEOs, low Earth. And you can think about those as just cell towers in the sky that are moving overhead very quickly. Well, so 5G, it's great, but what if we made a space terrestrial hybrid? If you pay attention to no other set of slides in my presentation here, pay attention to the next couple of slides. Let's skip forward to this one. Oops. This slide is same trip. This is a trip throughout Northern Europe. And in Northern Europe, these blue areas show areas where there is no connectivity to terrestrial. There's no 2G, there's no 3G, there's no 4G, and certainly there will be no 5G. The yellow areas, surprisingly not, is that you're going through a town. And right there, you're showing green is about 500 millisecond delay, yellow is about 100 millisecond delay. Going through here, oops, there's no connectivity. You're going around this corner, nice town, Here, you're getting 38 milliseconds. You're really, really fast. It's good stuff. But then you start heading out here, there's no connectivity. Do you think 5G is going to go out to this non-productive area? You heard the guy from Volkswagen said you can be on the Autobahn and not be connected. This is Europe. This is well-subsidized and governmentalized Europe. This is not dog breath Montana. This is not Minnesota. This is not Michigan. This is not the state of Washington. I had my friends from Nagoya come to Seattle and say, Tom-san, take me somewhere where there is no connectivity for data. I said, fine. 40 miles outside of the city of Seattle, it goes away, it comes back again in 170 miles when you get to Wenatchee. It's a fact of life. So, let's take a look at this slide. Let's back up. This slide, and I apologize for it, is our connectivity. The green area shows 500 milliseconds. In this case, the red and yellow show the opposite. It shows no connectivity because we're going through, you guessed it, a village and we're blocked. The point here is that if you layer these two things on top of each other, you have a very good coverage story. So if coverage is important, if it's important to be connected, this is a very powerful and strong story. So, 5G's good. LEO and GEO, having terrestrial hybrid is good. Let's add LEO connectivity and GEO. We use these terms, we banter them around, and what this means is that out here, these are where the geosynchronous satellites are. Ping, ping, ping. Takes a long time, 600 milliseconds to get in and out. Here, that's where the space station is. Those are low Earth. 1,200 kilometers above us is where that connectivity takes place. 2019, a number of companies, including OneWeb and our partner Intelsat, are putting up 700 of these, going to 1,700 of these low Earth satellites, which means you get internet connectivity without the urban canyon problem. I'm looking straight overhead. I'm not looking toward the equator in order to get connectivity. So let's talk about that for a minute. This is a fun little video that shows this. This is coming up something I like to call the moon, and we're coming in here on Earth. And out here in this orbit out here are all the geosynchronous satellites. They're out at 36,000 kilometers. What's cool about a geosynchronous satellite? In one beam, I can hit every car that is east of the Mississippi River. One beam. I can hit every car in Germany. I can hit every car in Germany, France, and Italy. So if I want to update SOTA, FOTA, if I want to send movie material, if I want to send any kind of common data to an automobile, I can do it incredibly cheaply. And now you're seeing what the LEOs will bring. They're directly overhead. It's a mesh network. It's the fastest network that the planet will know because I go up from South Africa, I bounce across the low Earth LEOs, and I come back down in New York. Gamers, stockbrokers, folks who have to have fast amount of time, this is what we're talking about. So, that's good. We had the 5G. We had a terrestrial integration. We had a combination of LEO and GEO. But let's also integrate something else here, and that is Unicast and Multicast. Unicast you're familiar with. That's the internet. It's TCP/IP. It's I talk to you, you talk to me, we talk back and forth to each other. Multicast is what I mentioned before, hitting every car east of the Mississippi River with one beam. What does that mean? Imagine you have an apartment complex or you have a vacation home that has a dish sitting on top of it, big old dish, and that you are paying $200 a month in order to get a subscription in there. How much of that money do you pay in order to get the bits onto your roof? Now, you're paying $199.95, my friends, in order to have content and digital rights into your house. you are paying practically nothing to get the bits on. Why? Because if that beam that is focused on everything east of the Mississippi River costs $10,000 a month, and you divide it by 10,000 cars, well, that's $1 a car. If you divide it by 100,000 cars, what's that, 10 cents a car? If you understand how the math of this works, it's one fixed cost divided by a whole lot of consumers. This slide says essentially the same thing, and that in this one, all the multicast kind of ideas. If you want to do map updates, the car selects by rejecting. The data comes in, it says, that's for me, oh, that's not for me, that's for me, that's for me. And that autonomous driving data, Xbox data, they're talking about VR kinds of application, enormous data consumers. Again, cheapest way to get those into the car is to bring them in by multicast. This slide goes on to say, hey, if you try to do this in a singular kind of fashion, one point to one point, it's going to cost a lot of money. If you can do it all in one go, it's going to cost considerably less. So we've built ourselves a good diner. 5G, great stuff. We'll do a great enabling material. You want multicast. You want to have the capability in order to have GEOs and LEOs. You want the capability to be able to integrate terrestrial back and forth. It's safe and it's powerful and it's secure, except it's also vulnerable. And there's two types of vulnerability, right? The Department of Defense, the Ministry of Defense, NATO, White House, anybody who is very concerned about their data uses satellite. I would argue that autonomous vehicles and SOTA and FOTA should also be using satellite. Why? Because it's a one-to-one, point-to-point communication system. You can't have a man-in-the-middle attack. There is no man in the middle because it's originating point going to the automobile point without going through the network in order to get there. So you have orders of magnitude fewer attack surfaces. It's a single network for authentication and also for emergency communications. So let's talk about that for a minute. Emergency communications. Again, I was just in Japan. In Japan, they had the Fukushima event. They went 10 days, that's 2 hands worth, of not knowing what roads were open or shut. They didn't know. Satellites were knocked off of their cement, and the cell towers went down. So they did not know what was open, what was closed, who they could warn, who they could not warn. Extremely risky situation they had. But this happens at sporting events and music events. Japanese are looking at the Olympics coming up, wondering how they're going to have their system crushed. Attacks, civil disturbances, and also eclipses. Greenville, South Carolina, earlier this year, 21st of August. We as Kymeta, by the way, we're in Puerto Rico right now having emergency services there, but we did this for the eclipse in Greenville. Greenville, town of 80,000 people, metropolitan area of about 800,000. They had about 2 million visitors for the eclipse. And the police chief, he was worried about Confederates. There were crazy people down there. There were counter demonstrations going on. They were worried about guys driving on the freeway and hitting the brakes at the wrong time and having this accordion effect. They didn't know where there were going to be fires. And he said, oh my gosh, we could have a situation where the cell system goes down. Let me tell you about modern police services. Modern police services are not what I grew up on, which is 1 Adam 12, 1 Adam 12. We have a 318 going on 124th. Please put out squad. They don't do that anymore. They have apps. And on the apps, the police chief looks at it and goes, this guy's here, I'm going to move him over there, this guy's here. They're like chess pieces that they deploy, right? If the internet goes down, they can't deploy them. So he says, this is such a good idea. I like it a lot. So it's kind of amusing. This guy works for the chief. He comes on over and he says, okay, how do I work a satellite phone? Well, it's just your phone. All you do is you turn on airplane mode and Wi-Fi and you're connected to it. Okay, great. How do I get a browser? it's just your phone. I mean, you just get a browser. How do I make my apps work? How do I make a phone call? So he said, so basically you don't need any training. So basically the answer is, no, you don't need any training. 3 hours before the event, standing out in front of the municipal building, center downtown of Greenville, I do a speed test. Sure. 15.1 megabits per second down, 3.35 megabits per second up. 2.5 hours before the event, everyone's taking pictures and sending them to mom. Mom, we're going to have an eclipse. It's cool. Look at the kids. Oops. We are now getting 0.19 megabits per second down, 19 kilobits down, and it's not measuring anything going up. Run a speed test here. Sorry, you can't run a speed test because there's no internet connectivity. We're moving in toward it. Here's our ping test. In the ping test, if you go over 1,000 milliseconds, you are considered unknown. And so we went from a ping of about 40 milliseconds all the way up. The internet was gently collapsing. The cell system was gently collapsing before our eyes. So we're at 12:58. We're about 2 hours beforehand. And I ran another test. Now we're doing 10 kilobits and 2 down. Sometimes it would actually wake back up again. Things would come back up. But you'd get weird messages because they would be, the system didn't know how to handle these. And again, you're a police chief. And you're going, oh my God, I can't have this happen. So we were, of course, he was running his system through us. Anybody doubt this? Roger Langtote, bless his pea-picking heart, decided to come down and see this in action, and he was actually witness this whole event. Here's my favorite one. T-Mobile, for those of you who don't know, that's Deutsche Telephone in the US. T-Mobile is showing 3 bars. That's great. T-Mobile is showing that I have a full data connection, and T-Mobile, LTE, and T-Mobile also then says, oh, by the way, this was 10 minutes after the event, you have no connectivity. Point is, the system is vulnerable and can collapse. This is what it looked like at full exposure of the eclipse. If you ever have a chance to go to an eclipse, it is an amazing analog experience. Completely recommend it. Just people hooting and hollering and having a great time. No bad things happened, only good things happened. It was pretty fun. So least cost, best signal, fit for data, hybrid terrestrial, hybrid space assets, LEO and GEO, radical hybrid delivery method, multicast and unicast, and a system that's based around security and emergency. So what would 5G mean to the automobile industry? I would argue what 5G should mean to be useful to the automobile industry is full access to the cloud, full stop. From anywhere to anywhere, always up to date, always secure for the hybrid connection. For all these good things that, of course, we all know about. So at TU-Automotive 18 months ago, we had this car that we did a trip across the US. We had INREX in front doing open cloud navigation, iHeart, radio application suite Yelps. We had VoiceBox in the second seat doing media search, YouTube, points of interest. All the way in the back, we had Netflix streaming. This is a huge application zone, and that is cloud-based Microsoft 365 for people who just want to have the mobile office. And by the way, it is a huge pig when it comes to bandwidth. And internet browsing by voice. So we did all of that. At Telematics Update Japan about 2 weeks ago, we did this trip across Japan. Same idea, streaming video, Skyping, and having the Skype switch between terrestrial and satellite, and terrestrial and satellite. It's really cool, by the way. Cloud-based internet browsing. And this is my last slide, just because it's so cool, all right? This is 200 kilometers per hour at a test track. It's some European-based automobile company going around. This is the executive saying, You can't track at those speeds that my people go. My people go way too fast. Okay. And that this is as fast around the roundabout as you could go, because there's a centrifugal force problem. You can't go more than about 36 degrees per second, otherwise you're plastered against the door. This is a guy who works for me. He likes to create vomit comets out of automobiles just to see if he can drop the satellite. And this is our satellite tracking of him trying to do that. And it was pretty extraordinary, and I think I'm at game time. So that's what we do, and that's the point around 5G. Thank you very much.